Hello, friends. Today we bring you the strange story of the Yuba County Five. Now, the Dyatlov Pass story may be one of the strangest unsolved mysteries to date. And because of the unexplained circumstances surrounding the incident, a plethora of theories arose. A slab avalanche, catabolic winds, infrasound, a Yeti attack, or some sort of strange Cold War standoff between the CIA and KGB operatives. But what if I told you there's a story equally as strange as Dyatlov Pass, but it happened here in the United States? And because of this case's outlandish nature and the unexplainable similarities to that of Dyatlov Pass, it was dubbed with the nickname the American Dyatlov Pass. Join us on this episode as we dive into the heartbreaking tale of the Yuba County Five. The story begins as Jack Madruga gripped the steering wheel of his prized 1969 Mercury Montego and listened as the car was filled with outbursts of laughter from his closest friend. The smiles of their faces seemed to illuminate the vehicle, casting a glow throughout, and Jack couldn't help but find himself smiling too. He looked to his right side and then up into the rearview mirror, watching his friends carry on. Locally, this group was lovingly known as the Boys, comprising of the following members: 30-year-old Jack Madruga, an Army veteran, and up until being laid off, he worked for the Sunsweet Growers as a busboy. 29-year-old William Bill Sterling, Jack Madruga's best friend. He was known as being very religious, and he spent his free time reading to mental patients in a local hospital. 32-year-old Ted Weir, who was known as somewhat of a prankster among his friends. He formerly worked as a janitor and snack bar clerk locally, but was urged to quit by his parents after they found out he was being bullied by customers at work. 24-year-old Jack Hewitt, who was best friends with Ted Weir. The pair were very close, and Weir took care of Hewitt, watching out for him like an older brother might do. And 25-year-old Gary Mathias. Gary had served in the U.S. Army, being stationed in Germany in the early 1970s. During his service, he developed a drug problem and later on would be diagnosed with schizophrenia, eventually leading to himself being psychiatrically discharged. Each of the boys were known for having intellectual disabilities and lived at home with their parents in Yuba City, California. The five friends shared a common interest and bonded over their love for the sport of basketball. Almost every conversation they shared was about the sport, whether it be talking about a recent college basketball game or talking about the next practice for their own basketball team. The boys played on a basketball team at the Rehabilitation Center of Yuba City named the Gateway Gators. Their first big game was scheduled for February 25th, 1978, and it was sponsored by the Special Olympics. The boys were absolutely ecstatic. They continued to spend countless hours watching college basketball games, studying the moves their favorite players made and the strategy behind each play. In return, they applied this newfound knowledge to their own game and hoping to win their first basketball tournament and its grand prize, a paid week-long vacation to the city of Los Angeles. On February 24th, 1978, the night prior to their big first game, the boys would lie out their jerseys on their beds. Ted Weir even had his mother wash his new high-top white sneakers and told her, "Don't let me oversleep. We have a big game tomorrow," before climbing into Jack Madruga's car and departing for Chico, California to watch their favorite basketball team, UC Davis, face off against Chico State. The boys would have a great night and share in celebration watching their favorite basketball team win. At around 10 p.m., and after climbing back into Madruga's car, they would drive to Bears Market in downtown Chico to purchase snacks for the ride home, becoming a mild annoyance for the store clerk who was trying to close up for the night. Little did she know, she would be one of the last people to see them alive. The following day, when Ted Weir's mother visited his room and found it unoccupied, she panicked and immediately phoned Bill Sterling's mother, who, too, was without her son. Knowing this was very uncharacteristic of their sons, they were never late and always returned home, they would file a police report, launching a full-scale investigation, including radio broadcasts. As a result of these radio broadcasts, a first piece of the puzzle would surface. A man by the name of Joe Shawns would come forward and report he saw the Mercury Montego and the group in the mountains the night of their disappearance. These mountains were 70 miles from Chico and far off any direct course to Yuba City. 55-year-old Californian Shawns would later explain that he had visited Rogers Cow Camp in the Plumas National Forest in his Volkswagen the same night to see if weather conditions would support a skiing trip for his family the following day. As he continued on this rough mountain road, facing unforgivable snowdrifts, eventually he found himself stuck. Shawns exited his car and proceeded to push in an attempt to recover his vehicle when he felt a sharp pain in his chest. He was having a heart attack miles away from help. Shawns pulled himself back into the driver's seat, desperately trying to calm his body in an attempt to overcome this adversity. Soon, he noticed two sets of headlights, one of which belonged to a pickup truck. Shortly after its arrival, he watched as a group of men and a woman with a baby exited the vehicle. Thinking this was the miracle he had prayed for, he removed himself from his own vehicle as well. Shawns screamed out as loud as he could for help, but no matter how loud he screamed and pleaded, his calls went unanswered. He then watched as the group walked off into the woods, ignoring him completely. Shawns then stated that he climbed back into his vehicle, drifting off for a few hours until he was awoken by the sight of what looked like flashlights. Once again, he entered the cold night, calling out for help. But like before, his calls went unanswered. A few more hours would pass, and his vehicle now being without gas, Shawns decided he would walk out on foot. He traveled 8 miles to a lodge, and while he walked down this mountain road, he passed an abandoned 1969 Mercury Montego left roadside. Following this lead on Tuesday, February 28, 1978, Jack Madruga's car was found abandoned, left on an unpaved road near Oroville in Rogers Cow Camp area, past Elkie Retreat by a park ranger. The car sat at 4,500 feet in elevation, more than 2.5 hours from Chico, in a completely opposite direction they were expected to go, way up in the Plumas National Forest. Investigators were absolutely baffled from what they discovered next. Police discovered inside the car empty cartons and wrappers of snacks purchased prior at Bears Market, along with programs for the UC Davis and Chico State basketball game and a neatly folded road map for the state of California. This found evidence suggested to law enforcement that all 5 of the boys were present in the car at the time of its abandonment. The more they dug into it, the farther they felt from the truth, raising more questions than answers. Police could visibly see ruts in the snow from the vehicle's tires, suggesting that the vehicle had been stuck mildly in a snowdrift. They would further explain that their vehicle could easily have been removed and that it wasn't so deep that the members of the 5 could not have pushed it out. The keys to the vehicle were not present, leading police to theorizing that they had encountered vehicle trouble, causing their abandonment. This was quickly debunked following the police hotwiring the car and starting it immediately and showing the gas tank was a quarter full. When police finally removed the car from this cold winter nightmare, questions only continued. Once the Montego was back at the station and subject to further and more thorough examination, it was discovered that the undercarriage of the vehicle was without damage. This made absolutely no sense to law enforcement. The road that they removed the Montego from was full of deep ruts and bumps. They would conclude that Jack Madruga would have to have been so careful and calm driving up this road to avoid even a minor scrape, or that Jack Madruga wasn't behind the wheel at all, and potentially someone who was very familiar with the road and area was behind the steering wheel. Madruga's family would state that he'd never let anyone else drive his car, not under any circumstances. Once they found out that the car was found unlocked and with a window down, they would explain that this display of behavior was not at all like him. He never left his Montego unsecured. The search party would scour the area's rough terrain by foot and horseback. Above, helicopters took to the sky surveying the area. Being the dead of winter, their efforts were not met with any results. June 4th, 1978, A group of motorcyclists enjoying a weekend of riding through the Plumas National Forest came across what looked like a forgotten Forest Service trailer. Their curiosity arose, and they decided to explore it momentarily before continuing on. As the first rider approached, and while he removed his helmet, he was engulfed by the disgusting smell of decay. Inside the trailer, 19 miles from the part of the mountain where the car was found, Ted Ware's body was discovered. His body had been wrapped in 8 sheets. He had lost nearly 100 pounds, and on his face he sported a beard, suggesting that he had lived up to 13 weeks before succumbing to a combination of starvation and hypothermia. The trailer he was found in was filled with ample supply of matches and kindling for a fire, but none was ever made. The trailer also held dozens of sea ration cans, a supply that could have kept the 5 alive for up to a year, yet these too were left untouched. Additionally, a nearby shed held a butane tank that, if the valve had been opened, it would have heated the whole trailer. On June 5, 1978, the remains of Madruga and Sterling were found a total of 11 miles from the site of the car, lying on opposite sides of the road. They had been severely scavenged by animals, and their bones were found scattered among the small surrounding area. Autopsies suggest that they died of hypothermia. It was speculated that because of how they were found, they had in their last stages given in to an overwhelming sensation for sleep. Refusing to leave one another's side, they laid down together and eventually met the same fate. 2 more days would pass, and 2 miles northeast of the trailer, Jack Hewitt's remains were located. Jack Hewitt's own father discovered his backbone under a manzanita bush. His body was so badly deteriorated that he had to be identified by his remaining shoes and pants. Later on, his skull was found downhill from the bush, and later dental records would confirm his identity. Gary Mathias was never found. The closest piece of evidence police found of Mathias lied within the same trailer Ware's body was discovered in. Gary's shoes had been found on the floor, while Ware's shoes were missing. Police tried to reason that the exchange of shoes was more than likely because Mathias had suffered from extreme frostbite, causing his feet to swell. This exchange of shoes quite possibly gave him a sense of relief from the pressure of his own shoes. So what happened? I'm sure you're left just as speechless and confused as I am. What would cause a group of healthy young men, the boys, Bill Sterling, Jack Hewitt, Ted Ware, Jack Madruga, and Gary Mathias, to travel more than 100 miles off course into the highest parts of a mountain in the dead of winter and simply exit their car and walk into the dead of night? It makes no sense at all. Is it possible the boys were chased, pursued by an angry spectator who they had a confrontation with at the basketball game, or possibly at Bears Market? If so, how can you explain no damage to the undercarriage of the car? Or was the car driven by an unknown individual that night? But if so, why hadn't the boys retaliated? Was Sean's story wholesome? If he did see a group of men the night of his heart attack, who was the woman and the baby? And what were they doing in the woods? Also, if Ware and Mathias made it to the Forest Service trailer the same night of their disappearance, or even a few nights after, why didn't they start a fire to warm themselves? Why hadn't they eaten any of the sea rations? Were they possibly afraid of giving away their location? In conclusion, I hope one day the mystery surrounding this tragedy is resolved, and the families of Bill Sterling, Jack Hewitt, Ted Ware, Jack Madruga, and Gary Mathias get their well-deserved answers and closure. Well, there you have it. What do you make of this strange case? So many questions and no answers. Hard to believe. I look forward to your comments on this one, but please keep it friendly and respectful. Meanwhile, be good to yourselves and each other. Be safe out there. It's getting really weird. I'll see you a little farther on down the trail. I'm Steve Stockton, and I'll talk to you next time.